Okay, let's begin, Rabotai. We are on Lamed Amud Bet. At the bottom, we're going to just quickly run through the Mishnah one more time. So if you're following in the art scroll, it's 30b3. Says the Mishnah, Bepesach Korim Beparashat Moadot Shel Torat Kohanim. Pesach we read the chelik of the Moadot, which is all the parts that are connected to the holidays. Shel Torat Kohanim in Vayikra. Torat Kohanim is another way of calling the book of Chumash called Vayikra, because it's the Torah of the Kohanim. Oh. Most of Vayikra references mitzvot that are connected to the Kohanim's obligations. Be'atzeret on Shavuot, Sheba Shavuot. We read the part of the Torah that says 7 weeks you count. Rosh Hashanah b'chodesh Shivi v'echad lachodesh. The Rosh Hashanah we read the day. Yom Kippurim Haremot. You read Haremot, which is about after the death of the two sons of Aaron. We said we'll get to that in the Gemara. Yom Tov Rishon Shel Hag Korim b'Parashat Moadot B'Torat Kohanim. The first day of Sukkot, we read the parasha of connected with the holidays in Sefer Vayikra. Okay. B'sh'ar kol yemot hachag, the rest of the days of Sukkot, we read b'korbanat hachag. You read specifically the korban of that day. On Hanukkah, you read the Nisi'im, the gifts that were given by the Nisi'im before they did the Hanukkah Mizbeach. On Purim, we read Vayavo Amalek. B'Rosh Chodashim, on Rosh Chodesh, you read Rosh Chodeshechem. You read the pasuk that tells us about the korbanot of Rosh Chodesh. B'Ma'amadot Ma'aseh Bereshit. Ma'amadot is when they would stay. Each part of Am Yisrael had a representation during the times of the korbanot. So they would read each day a part of Sefer Bereshit. B'Tanuyot, on the fast days. Berachot u'klalot, you read the berachot and the kilalot that are brought down in the Torah. You don't pause to break the aliyot in the kilalot. Rather, one reads all the kilalot in one aliyah. B'shnei b'hamishi, Monday and Thursday. B'shabbat v'mincha, on Shabbat afternoon. Korin kisidran, we read every week according to the parasha, really of the week ahead. And you can't count the reading of mincha and of Monday and Thursday. You can't count that towards the reading on Shabbat and say, you know what, I'm going to read Monday Sheni, Thursday Shelishi, Shabbat Mincha Revi'u, or vice versa. Sheni is Shabbat Mincha. Monday would be Shelishi, and Thursday would be Revi'u, and then I read from the Chamishi till the end. But rather, in order to read the parasha according to the takana that we have to read the parasha every week, you have to read the entirety of the parasha. Shneimar, what is this coming to? What's the source for this? That we read the holidays of these Pesukim, like it says, Moshe spoke about the holidays of Hashem to the Jewish people. Mitzvatan, the mitzvah, the commandment is, just as Moshe said over what God had said about the holidays to the Jewish people on the Moed, so too we reply, but we represent that by reading what God said about the holidays on each holiday. Okay, says the Gemara. Tan Rabbanan, Pesach in Parashat Moadot. Pesach, you read the portion from that's about that holiday. Pesach Gilgal. And what do? What's the Haftarah? The Haftarah is about the Pesach the Jewish people celebrated with Yehoshua when they get to Eretz Israel in the Gilgal. Gemara says, now that we have 2 days, right? Because now in Chutz La'aretz, we don't have 1 day of Yom Tov, we have 2 days. Yom HaKama b'Pesach Gilgal. On the first day, the Haftarah is Pesach of Gilgal. Ulmachar Pesach Yoshiyahu. The second day, we read of Pesach Yoshiyahu, which is the Pesach that was brought much later on with Yoshia. Now, this idea follows the same concept that whenever we're reading Haftarah, we're reading a Haftarah which is connected to and related to the parasha that you're going to be reading in the Torah reading of that day. What do we do on the rest of the days of Pesach? Milaket v'korem inyano shel Pesach. We find milaket means you gather, like you're gathering wheat in the field. Milaket v'korem inyano shel Pesach. We gather various readings from the Torah that relate to Pesach, and each one is read on another day of Pesach. The Gemara says, okay, well, what is this smattering? What is this smorgasbord of Pesach readings that we're going to visit? The Gemara says, Amar of Papa, Mapu Siman. Mapu is the sign. What does that mean? It's a sign. Mem, Aleph, Pei, Vav. So each one of those will tell you exactly which one is which. Yom Tov Aharon Shel Pesach Korin Vahi B'Shalach. On the final day of Pesach, what do we read? Vahi B'Shalach Paro et ha'am, which is what we read today when Paro sent the Jewish people out. Why are we reading it now? Because we're going to experience after the night of the Seder. So what's the next thing that happens? Vahi B'Shalach Paro et ha'am. The aftermath of the Jewish people's exit is the aftermath of the first days of Pesach. Umaftirin, and what do we do in the Haftarah? We read the Haftarah of Vayidaber David. So what's the Haftarah of Vayidaber David? It's also like a commentary about how HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved David HaMelech. So just like you have in the Torah reading, Az Yashir, that they sang about being saved in the ocean from the Egyptians, so too we read Maftirim Vayidaber David, the song of David. Ul Machar, and what do we read the next day? On the last day of Pesach, which is only relevant in Galut. Machar Kol HaBechor. We read Kol HaBechor. So what do you read if you're going to read Kol HaBechor on the last day of Pesach? Why? How is that going to help Kol HaBechor? Because Kol HaBechor has all the halachot of all the holidays in it. Umaftirin. And what do we end with? We end with Od Hayom Benov. With the last element is the final, just like we have on the 8th day. We're reading about the aftermath of the destruction of the most powerful empire, the empire of Mitzrayim at the time. So we also read about the destruction of the strongest empire at the time, the empire of Sancherev, under the king of Hiskiyahu during his reign, where they came to surround Jerusalem, and overnight the entirety of Sancherev's army dies around the walls of Jerusalem. They're all moot. And Hiskiyahu is saying, it says to Hashem, I don't even have strength to fight them. I'm going to lie in my bed and you take care of them. And he goes to sleep. And they wake up the next morning and they're all dead.
That's when they're in the camps.
Around the walls of Jerusalem. Yeah. That's Sancherev. Okay?
Nice.
Kacha yovedu kol oivecha amunai.
What do you call that? Emunah? Bitachon?
I think a healthy smattering of both.
Yeah.
The Gemara actually brings a whole, like a cascading effect of different leaders, where one leader said, I'm going to chase them and I'm going to fight with them. Help me, Hashem. The next leader says, I can't chase them, but I can fight with them, so help me. And the next one says, I can't chase them or fight them, but I could pray. And the other one's like, I can't even do anything, I'm just going to bed. That's what Chizkiyahu says, Takadosh Baruch Hu. And most people see that as they thought that the Gemara means that Chizkiyahu was just saying, I can't be bothered, I'm going to bed. But actually, what they explain is that Chizkiyahu was holding on a level where he didn't feel like he needed to do any of those. And therefore, he said, according to where I am in my emunah and my bitachon, this is my obligation, so I'm not doing more. And indeed, that's actually what happened. Anyway, says the Gemara, sorry. We read Odayom Benov, which is the story of Sancherev. Now, Amar Abaye, what do we do now? What's the minhag of the people to read? Mishach Torah, Kadesh b'Kaspa, Pisol b'Midmadbera, Shelach Buchra. So he gives you this the thing that we said earlier on. We talked about the reading of the holiday, and what do we call it? We called it Mapu, right? What's Abaye giving you instead? Mishach Torah, pull the shore. Kadesh Kaspa, sanctify with Kesef. Pisol Midbera, right? Dig out in the desert. And Shilach Buchra, send the firstborn. So what did he do? He gave you a little mini rap, okay? And each one of the phrases rhymes. Mishach Torah, Kadesh Kaspa, Pisol Midbera, Shilach Buchra. What are those? Those are the Aramaic translations of Shilach Buchra, Kol HaBechor, right? Pisol B'Midbara, Pisol Lecha, Shnei Luchot Avanim. Kadesh bekaspa, Kadesh li, right? So each one of the things was a memorable way in Aramaic, in the language of the time, that would remind you of each one of the mapus. Okay, says the Gemara. Ba'atzeret on Shavuot. What do we read? Shiva Shavuot tispolecha. Count 7 weeks. Umaftirim b'Havakuk, and we read the haftarah is on the Navi Havakuk, and Havakuk is specifically regarding the elements of Torah, and therefore, since Havakuk speaks about the receiving or the giving of Torah, so it's relevant to the time of Shavuot. Interestingly enough, as well, the Gemara tells us about Havakuk that they asked if the rabbis could condense the Torah. And the Gemara says that this one, he boiled it down to these 5 principles. The next one boiled down to 3. Until Chavakuk v'he'emidan alachat. Chavakuk came along and he boiled the Torah down to one phrase, to one idea. What is that one idea? No.
The front thing?
If you don't know it already, that's what I was hoping you would say. I was laying a trap. Because we have already, it's very common knowledge, the boiling down to one principle that Morris just said. But that's not Chavakuk. Who is that?
Shammai Hillel.
Rabbi Akiva and Hillel. Both Rabbi Akiva and Hillel.
Right.
Hillel says it one way, Rabbi Akiva says it another way. All right? One says V'aftarecha kamocha, one says Mai desani lach, what you hate, the friend shouldn't do to you, don't do to your friend. But Chavakuk doesn't say either of those. B'Chavakuk v'imidan alachat, he says, what's the boil down to one principle? Tzaddik be'emunato yicheh. A tzaddik lives on his faith. Tzaddik be'emunato yicheh. So I was thinking to myself, maybe it makes sense also that that's why we read Chavakuk on Atzeret, on Shavuot, which is about giving the Torah, because we have the Navi that taught us the Torah in the briefest amount of words was whom? Was Chavakuk. So if it's about receiving the Torah, it's hard to receive all the Torah. How do you receive the Torah? So we maftirim b'Chavakuk. That's my chidush. Yeah.
Were these prophets colorful? Were they low-key, reserved?
I don't know.
When you read some of the stuff, it's fascinating.
I can't comment on their
There's no commentary about, who they were, their characteristics.
There are, but not in the color commentary. In other words, like no one's telling you that Shmuel on the side was a wicked painter. Like I haven't seen. I haven't seen.
Somebody stood up to Shaul.
Yeah, but
so it had to be a powerful.
So it had to be powerful.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. So you hear about their midot, but not necessarily their personalities. Okay, not just that. By the way, when he gets a hold of Agag, the king of Amalek, after Shaul didn't kill him and lost his throne over it, what does it say about Shemuel? Vayishasef oto. He drew and quartered him. He chopped him in half, lengthwise. Okay? Wow. So you're reading about Shmuel, this is like
that's colorful.
Was colorful, but you don't know, you're not getting the color commentary outside of the gvurav, the strength. Okay? All right, let's carry on. Acherim omrim. Okay, so that's the first opinion in the Braita. Acherim omrim, others say, B'chodesh HaShelishi, we read on Shavuot in the 3rd month, which is the mitzvah of the giving of the Torah, and that's the portion that leads up into the Aseret HaDibrot. Maftirim b'Merkava, and what do we read? We read by Merkava. We read the chelek in the Nevi'im, which talks about Hakadosh Baruch Hu's Maaseh Merkava. It's the portion that we read on Shavuot, which is literally all about how everything looks in the heavens, with all of the different kinds of angels. It's fascinating. I think that they specifically put that reading on the first day, on the second morning, the first morning of Shavuot, after everyone is literally mooting from lack of sleep. They gave us Maaseh Merkava. That way no one will be able to focus too much on the high. Literally, it's describing the nature of the angels and how many wings they have and what their faces look like and the nature of the Bazak and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chariot. And it's It's the highest of the high, and that's when we get it after being up all night. Says the Gemara. Now that we have 2 days, we follow both opinions in the Mishnah. And how do we do it? Exactly like I just said, in reverse. Acherim Omrim tells us about this reading about the Merkava, and when do we do it? On the first day of Shavuot. And the answer is that we swap the days. The second opinion in the Braita is what we do on the first day. The first opinion in the Braita is what we do on the second day. Sheva Shavuot and Chabakuk. Okay, let's carry on. Says the Gemara, Berosh Hashanah, on Rosh Hashanah, what do we read from the Torah? We read B'chodesh HaShevi'i, in the 7th month. Like I mentioned to you earlier, Rosh Hashanah, even though in our terminology it's the head of the year, so you'd think it's in the first month, in the Torah's reckoning of months, Nisan is the first month. So Tishrei is actually the 7th month. Rosh Hashanah B'chodesh HaShevi'i, we read Chodesh HaShevi'i, the parasha that tells us about Rosh Chodesh in the Torah. Umaftirin aben yakir Ephraim. We read Haftarah that talks about how HaKadosh Baruch Hu says how Am Yisrael is for him like a child. Like you take a child, your kid, and your baby, and you play with him on your knee, and it's like a game, and it's so beautiful, and it's so wonderful, and it's so much fun. So too Hashem rejoices. He's ecstatic in interacting with Am Yisrael, like the way a grandpa is with a child on the knee, making the sounds, just delighting in the child. The end of that pasuk is Haben Yakeli Ephraim im Yeled Shashuim Kimi de Dabribo Zachor Eskerenu Od. As much as I speak about him, that's how much I want to talk about him. I want to remember him. I want to feel him. I want to have him more and more. Yeshomrim, what's the other side of this, the Braita? What do we read? Hashem pakaret tzara, that God remembered tzara. And when does that happen? Happens on Rosh Hashanah. Umaftirin, and we read the Haftarah, Bachana. Each one, both the first reading and the Haftarah, are both about people who were barren and who were remembered, both Chana and Sarah Imenu. So in each one of them, we talk about how they were remembered on this day. Why? Because that's really what's happening on the day of Rosh Hashanah, when a person's is being remembered for their deeds and decided whether or not they're going to be able to, they're going to have that year. It's happening again. We got to get him. We got to get him to move the. No, but that's because the router was moved out of this room. I think that's the problem. We got to get Haron to move the router back in here. Okay. No, I think it's usually in here, but sometimes they take it out to the lobby. All right. We got to ask him for that. Okay. Let's carry on. Says you might want maybe just put it on mobile. That might be better than the Wi-Fi. Says the Gemara. Exactly the same thing. Today we have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Yom Hakama ki yesh omrim. On the first day we read the like the yesh omrim, like the second opinion, and on the second day lemachar ve'Elohim nisa et Abraham, and the next day you read the story of the Akedah and maftirin haben yakir, and we read haben yakir, the thing that the first opinion said. However, in the Braita's response, I don't know if you realize this, we're changing on the second day the reading, not the maftir. The opinion that we saw earlier on said that you read on the first day, on Rosh Hashanah you read B'chodesh Shevi'i. What are we saying now that you read on the second day? V'ha'elohim yisad Abraham, the story of the Akedah. So the Gemara is changing what we read today from what we said before. Okay? Now why do we read the Akedah on Rosh Hashanah? Because of the zechut of the Akedah, as we say on Rosh Hashanah. By the way, I don't know if you realize this, the whole song of Et Sharei Ratzon, what is it about? Oked ve'anekad ve'hamizbeach. We're reading that in the Torah, we're singing it in the Piyut, because we're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to remember the zechut of the Akedah for the grandchildren of Yitzchak, because in the aftermath of the Akedah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised the Jewish people to be with them forever. So we're kind of cashing in on the Akedah, on the most important day, the day of judgment, on Rosh Hashanah. Let's carry on. B'Yom HaKippurim, what do we read? Acharemot. You read Acharemot Shnei Bnei Aaron Umaftirin, and what do we read in Haftarah? Kiko Amar Ram V'Nisa. So says Hakadosh Baruch Hu, who is elevated, who is God on high, so to speak. And what's the connection? Two things. Number one, the Haftarah over there is focused on Teshuvah. But besides for that, also the very fact that we're saying, so says Hashem, Ram V'Nisa. When is God elevated and uplifted? On Yom Kippur. By the fact that everyone is returning, everyone is praying. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu was uplifted in the eyes of the people. So therefore we're reading that Haftarah. U'b'mincha korin be'arayot. And what do we do in Mincha? Mincha and Yom Kippur, we read about all of the arayot, all of the adulterous relations. U'maftirin, sorry?
Isn't that Acharemot?
What do you mean?
The Gilui Arayot, all that stuff. For
Okay.
Unions. Isn't that in Acharemot?
Yes, so?
So we read in Mincha, or I thought we said
No,
we read in Shachar?
Acharemot is the beginning of that parasha.
Yeah.
We read about the death of the two sons of Aaron. This bit is the portion
Okay.
that discusses, only the portion that discusses Arayot.
Yeah.
Okay, says the Gemara. No, just 1 second.
I once had to read Yonah.
It's a big zechut.
Someone bought it for me.
What was the return policy like?
It was not. I read the whole thing. I mean, I did a good job, but stuff.
It's not easy. Yonah is not easy. Okay.
Finished the fast that year.
8.
Yeah. So what's interesting to me is that at first glance you think about the idea that you're reading the Arayot on Yom Kippur. That's a very strange thing. Here we are, all elevated, and now we're saying, and don't sleep with your mother, and don't have relations with your father's wife and your brother's wife. That's really where we are right now. In the Mincha of Yom Kippur, we're in the loftiest places. So why are we reading about Arayot? So many reasons are given for this. One reason is to say that even someone who sinned on such a base level is still shayach for teshuvah. But there's other reasons as well, and that is that it's a call and a reminder to a person who's doing teshuvah, who thinks that they're so lofty, that you don't realize oftentimes that if a person is not careful, the Yetzer Hara is capable of getting you to do even the worst sins. So here you are thinking, you know what, I'm only going to do Birkat HaMazon out of a birkon. This is your New Year's resolutions. But you're forgetting about the fact that you're allowing yourself every day to be put in situations where you could be much worse off. So the Torah is reminding a person that every single Jewish person, even who's in the highest level, who thinks that they're biggest tzaddik, like the language of the Gemara, en aputropos le'arayot. There is no guardian when it comes to adultery. When it comes to matters of ta'ava, of deep desire, a person, even who's on a high level, might be capable of falling. Says the Gemara. So, Maftirim b'Yonah, and we read in the end Yonah. Why do we read Yonah on Yom Kippur? Number one, because you can't run away. Number two, we see that the people of Nineveh, even though they were non-Jewish, even though they were already signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours, chalas. The whole city is going to be turned over. Still, they put on sackcloth and ashes. They did teshuvah completely, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu accepted their teshuvah and forgave them. So we're also supposed to take courage from that on this day of teshuvah. Says the Gemara, Amar B'Yochanan, Kol Makam She'ata Motzeh Gvurato Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every time you find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in His strength, Ata Motzeh Anvetanuto. You find His anivut. Excellent. דבר זה כתוב בתורה ושנו בנביאים משולש בכתובים. We find a source for this in Torah and in Nevi'im and in Ketuvim. כתוב בתורה, it says in the Torah, כי השם אלוהיכם הוא אלוהי האלוהים ואדוני האדונים. Hashem, your God, is the God of all gods and the master of all masters. וכתיב בתרי, and what does it say immediately following this lofty description of God? עושה משפט יתום ואלמנה. Look, he's worried about the yatom and the almana. He's getting busy with making sure that they're okay. Now, it's interesting. Why would that classify as humility?
I don't know. It's compassion. I don't think it's humility.
Excellence, compassion. Why is it humility? The answer is, it's not humility in a person who's humble. In a person who's arrogant, who has power, they don't spend time dealing with the low or the weak. The only thing that's worth their time is the powerful, is the mighty. So in a well-adjusted, powerful king, right?
That's a great thing you should teach to the people in this congregation, in all congregations.
Having time for
the powerful people, yes, making the time for the Yatom v'Almanot and people that need help. They do, but it's a great thing to constantly remind people of.
Be'ezrat Hashem, inshallah, I will.
Tremendous.
Now, but again, what I love so much is how the Gemara just backhandedly teaches you this lesson.
Great.
Right? Because I have another makor for this in the Torah that would have been much easier. But I feel like the Gemara was desperate to teach this to us, so he gave us this example. When we finish, I'll come back and I'll give you the example, my example from the Gemara in Gittin. Says the Gemara, so where else do we find this idea? Vishanui b'neviim. It's also in the Nevi'im. Where does it say? In the Nevi'im, this idea. Ko amara menisa. So does the uplifted and exalted God say, Shochen ad v'kadosh shemo. How God, the one that lives forever and ever and who's holy. Uchtiv batre, and what does it say right after that? Ve'et dakeh u'shval ruach, and I am with all of those that are very, very low. This is a very easy one to kind of understand how that's anvitanuto, that this is his humility. God, even though he's so high, where does he dwell with? Who does he hang out with? Who's he with? He's with the simple ones, the weak ones, the ones that are low spirit. Mishulash beketuvim, we find the ketuvim dechtiv, solu larochev aravot biyashemo. Solu, right? Solu lerochev aravot biyashemo. We say to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, speak highly of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, to he who rides ba'aravot in the heavens with his name being Hakadosh Baruch Hu. What do you see right after that? Avi Yitomim v'dayan almanot. He is the father of the Yitomim, and he is the judge of the widows. He makes sure that they're okay. So again, we find HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his anvitanuto, his humility is such that even though he's so exalted, who's he hanging with? Who's he spending time with? Who's he looking after? He's looking after the weakest people of society. The famous line goes, the measure of a society is how it treats its most lowly subjects, its most vulnerable people. So, where was my proof from in the Torah? The Gemara in Gittin says, it says, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. We're reading it this week in Az Yashir. Who is like you, ba'elim, amongst the mighty, O God? Says the Gemara in Gittin, don't read it, Mi chamocha ba'elim Hashem. Who is amongst the mighty, O God, like you? Rather read it, Mi chamocha ba'ilemim Amonai. Ilem. What does Ilem mean? Someone who cannot speak.
Right.
Who is like you amongst those who remain silent? Okay? That's the Gemara says. Why? What does that mean? The Gemara in the context over there is talking about the Churban, that Titus HaRasha came and he pierced the parochet with his spear and he said, I killed the God of the Jews. And God let him walk out. And the Gemara says, they quoted about God, look at how God is he's the most silent. There's no one who's silent like God, that he could hear the blaspheming of this guy in his Beit HaMikdash and let the guy walk out.
It's an insult, isn't it?
Accept the insult and remain quiet. So God, who is as quiet as you? Rav Chaim Shmulevitz asks, I don't understand. You're learning that God is quiet from the pasuk that says, Mi chamocha ba'elim Hashem. When was that? When God destroyed the Egyptians in the river, in the Yam Suf. And what's the pasuk saying? Who is as mighty as you? You're taking the phrase that is, who is as mighty as you, and transferring it to mean, who is as quiet as you? That's where you're learning it from. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. When someone is that mighty, then when they remain silent, you know it's a sign of their strength. When someone is not so mighty and they're silent, maybe it's a sign of weakness. So where do we learn that God is more silent than anyone else? From the pasuk that shows if he would have wanted to get involved, he could have wiped out the whole nation, never mind this one guy. But when you see the guy, the Borei Olam, that could destroy all of Egypt in one moment in the ocean, and then you see that he allows Titus to walk out of his temple after doing what he just did, taking a harlot on a Sefer Torah in the Kodesh HaKodashim. And God just lets him go because time for the Khurban. So we learn Mi chamocha ba'ilmi mamonai. I think that's the answer. That's an example in Torah where you find in God's greatness and in God's strength and in God's elevated nature also his humility. The fact that he is capable of remaining quiet and not getting arrogant and saying, Titus messed with me. No, this is the plan. And God is perfectly okay holding his sword. The Gemara says, Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag, on the first day of Sukkot, Korim B'Parashat Moadot Shpitat Shabbat Korat Kohanim. We read the portion that discusses the halacha, the holiday in Vayikra. Umaftirin, and what do we read in the Haftarah? Hine Yom Ba Lamonai. Behold, the day is coming for Hashem. What is that talking about? It talks actually about the massive war that's going to take place in the end of time from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what it says over there is that what does God do to all these nations that he's going to conquer in the time of Mashiach? They all must come up to the Beit HaMikdash to pay service, to show fealty to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Pasuk says, and the ones that don't come up, their eyes will dry up, shrivel up in their sockets. So you understand? So there's so much there. There's so much there in the Pasuk that relates to Sukkot, but a Sukkot of another time, of the time of Mashiach. Now that we have 2 days, what do we do? Lemachar mikre hachinami karinan. So in every other part of the Braita, we had a machloket. What did you read on this day, on this holiday? First opinion, second opinion. The Gemara says, and now that we have 2 days, we do like both of them. Here, you only have one opinion. So the Gemara says, so what do you do on the other day? Answers the Gemara, do over. Excellent. So we read the same opinion. Lemachar mikra hachinami karinan. We read the same thing again. Afture mai. What do you do with the haftarah? The Gemara says, Maftirin ve'yikahalu el hamelech Shlomo, and they all gathered to Shlomo HaMelech. And what's that talking about? That's talking about when Shlomo HaMelech first opened up the Beit HaMikdash, and everyone gathered, and that was on Sukkot. Now, to me, this is a little interesting. Can I tell you why it is interesting? Well, maybe let's see if you guys figure out. Why is it interesting that we're reading the first haftarah on day 1, second haftarah on day 2?
But before that, we were swapped. You're saying with regards to
Just now, we said to read the same piece in the Torah, but the haftarah on the first day is the haftarah of Hine Yom Ba, and the haftarah on the second day is the haftarah of Shlomo HaMelech.
Was that from the first? Was that from the second Braita or the first Braita?
There was no Braita. It doesn't. The Braita doesn't tell you another haftarah. It gave us one, and the Gemara now added what we do on the second day. The question is, it's chronologically out of order. On day 1, we should have read about King Shlomo. On day 2, we should read about Mashiach. Why are we reading about the future before we read about the past?
Not everyone has 2 days.
Sorry?
Not everyone has 2 days, so this way it's...
So you want to fulfill...
So the people that only do 1 day at least hear that portion.
Okay, so why couldn't you say the other way? The people that are going to have 1 day are going to miss out on another portion.
Hearing Mashiach is maybe more important for them to hear than...
Okay, okay, all right. I want more.
Anything to do with the aspiration of the new Beit HaMikdash or no?
What do you mean?
Shlomo HaMelech is the Beit HaMikdash. It's when he consecrated the Beit HaMikdash, he said, right?
Okay.
I don't know.
What happens when Mashiach comes? What comes first? The rebuilding of the temple or the coming of the Mashiach?
Oh, good point.
Coming of the Mashiach. Yeah. So first we read about the coming of the Mashiach and the battles that take place to lead up into that. And then we read about consecrating a Beit HaMikdash. Not for the sake of reading about the past, but as a map for the future. for how we're going to do that after the Mashiach comes, and that's why I read it in that order.
Teetered, but I couldn't get across the goal.
If you put the two together, we would have it.
Yeah, turnover and downs going the other way.
Rabbi, I heard an opinion that when Mashiach comes, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a war or a battle. That was something that I heard that I kind of liked, because the rabbi said it doesn't necessarily mean, it's a bad thing and people are going to die when Mashiach comes. So I just wanted to know, your opinion on that.
You want to know if there's going to be a war?
Yeah.
Most of the opinions say that there's going to be a cataclysmic war, the war of Gog and Magog. There is one opinion that says that there will not be a war of Gog and Magog. Rather, Gog and Magog is going to be a virus. And it's going to wipe out the population of the world, but without a single shot being fired. Where do we find that opinion? During COVID, when I was sure, number one, that this was it, but number two, we all had time to learn some more during COVID, okay? So, in fact, that opinion is brought down in Gog and Magog, and one of the proofs that he brings is he says that in the story of Gog and Magog, it doesn't talk about a war that takes place. He has a whole logic for why he wants to say it's a virus. There's Gog and Magog. There's almost warring factions within the human body. But that is a singular opinion. Most opinions hold that there will be this war before the end. Okay, says the Gemara. Mafti v'sha'ar kol yemot hachag. What do we do on the rest of Hasukot? Korim korbanot hachag. You read on the korbanot of Sukkot. If you remember, we said this when we learned about the Mishnah last time, that there's 70 korbanot that are brought to represent the 70 nations of the world, okay? And after you finished doing each day, they would do 13 bulls, and then 12, and then 11, and then 10, and 9, 8, until you get all the way down to the 8th day. Then you have 70 bulls, and then what do you have after that? You have, what's at the end of Sukkot? Shmini Atzeret. On the 8th day, they bring one bull. And what does that represent? Am Yisrael. So there's 70 nations and one Am Yisrael. And therefore, you finish with all of those korbanot first, and then God says, Shmini Atzeret, stop, stay with me, my dear son, Beni Bechori Yisrael, stay with me for one more day. So that's what you read the rest of the days of the Chag. Yom Tov Acharon, what do we read the last day? Kol HaBechor. We read Kol HaBechor, and that has all of the pieces of the holidays in it. Okay? Mitzvot v'chukim u'bechor. First you start with the mitzvot, then you have the chukim, which are the mitzvot that we don't do for specific reasons. Then you have the bechor, umaftirin. And what do you do in the haftarah? V'hi kichalot Shlomo, when Shlomo finished the building of the Beit HaMikdash. So there were two parts or portions that we're going to be covering with regards to Shlomo HaMelech. One portion is when everyone gathered for the finishing of the construction of the Beit HaMikdash. The second part is when Shlomo HaMelech gives them the beracha that's quoted by Rashi at the Yom HaShemini on the 8th day of the Miluim. And what beracha does he give? He says, V'inu that the work of our hands should be desired by Hakara, by Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And after that was done, then he sent everybody home. Says the Gemara, Ulamachar. What do we read on the next day, which is the second day of Shmini Atzer? Remember, we have 2 days of every Yom Tov. We read V'zot HaBeracha. You read V'zot HaBeracha, Maftirin, and you read as a haftarah, Vayamod Shlomo. And you read the haftarah is another piece with Shlomo, where we read the tefillah that Shlomo HaMelech said, which is also around Sukkot. So Shlomo is rocking the whole holiday of Sukkot. First of all, we discuss the finishing of the Beit HaMikdash. Then we discuss the beracha that Shlomo HaMelech gives to the people. Then we discuss the tefillah that Shlomo HaMelech prayed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu before they started with the Beit HaMikdash. Okay? Now, we see from here, by the way, that it's a Gemara Beferush. The Gemara explicitly says that we read Vizot Beracha on what is the second day of Shmini Atzeret, which is Simchat Torah. Now, why am I saying this? Why am I mentioning this? Because I think this is very important. There's a lot of New Age Orthodox Jews that love to try and nitpick on everything in Judaism, and they say, "Oh, this is new, and we never had this, and this is something that was made up." I've heard people say, "Oh, the whole Simchat Torah is really made up. There's no makor. Simchat Torah doesn't appear anywhere. It's nowhere. We wanted another reason to party, so we made Simchat Torah." Here you find explicitly in the Gemara tells you that the specific reading for the second day of Shmini Atzeret is Vizot HaBeracha. Now, why is that important? Can anyone tell me why that's important? Maybe that's just the last reading in the parasha, and that's what we're up to. Who said that just because you read Vizot HaBeracha on the second day of Shmini Atzeret, that means that there's Simchat Torah? Maybe that's just the parasha that we're up to, which it is. That is the parasha that we're up to. Lemachar, on the second day of Shmini Atzeret. So how do you know that means that that's Simchat Torah?
As opposed to what?
Maybe that's just the regular reading. That's what they're up to. Remember, we finished every other parasha in the Torah. We're now up to Vizot HaBeracha. So that's why we're reading, because that's what we're up to.
On what day?
On the second day of Shmini Atzeret.
Right, but they're not saying it's a Saturday.
Okay.
They're saying the next day. So it's got to follow from, if you're reading that significant of a parasha, it's got to be a holiday, no?
Holiday or Monday or Thursday.
What do you mean it's got to be a holiday?
Monday. It's not a 3 sentences.
No, correct. So let's say it's Vizot HaBeracha. But how do you know that means that this is a day of Simchat Torah?
You're reading the list, you're finishing the Torah.
So? But that's what you're up to.
I got it, but there's a celebration when you finish something.
You're missing one point.
Oh my God.
This is so sharp, but we're forgetting it. What did we say in the beginning? That when it comes to Shabbat and Yom Tov, we don't do what we would normally do. So every other holiday, we don't care what we're up to in the Torah. So on Pesach, on Shavuot, on Sukkot, we don't care what we're up to that week. We have a special reading for the holiday. All of a sudden, the second day of Shmini Atzeret, we're going to read the regular weekly reading, the parasha that we're up to in the Torah. It must be that the Gemara is already telling you, mifurash, that this is the holiday of finishing the Torah. You get it? You see how sharp that is? So all these people that tell you, where's the makor for Simchat Torah? Right here. Because the Gemara says explicitly that we read the portion of Vizot HaBeracha. It's not just that we're reading whatever we're up to. Because on holidays, we don't read what we're up to. The fact that they took Vizot HaBeracha and moved it from the following Shabbat to this holiday means that what is the nature of this holiday?
Right.
Finishing the Torah. How sharp is that?
Fantastic.
Okay.
But,
Let's go. Sorry?
but and how does it, or how do we find the...
That sounds like something you got from couples therapy, by the way. You're like, and.
How do we get to the first day of the Chag? In Israel, obviously there's only one day, but it doesn't... With all the other days, it says what you read on the first day of the Chag, and that's what we read.
Yeah.
On the second day, here, it says Vizot HaBeracha.
Mm-hmm.
But we read in Israel, you read Zot HaBeracha on the first day. Obviously, because it's only one day.
Yes.
So we just...
So when it's one day, you're going to read this one. By the way, just if you're paying close attention, we had two examples already of two opinions of what you read. On the first day, right? First, two opinions. And each time, what did the Gemara say?
Swap.
In the case when you have two, read the second one on the first day. Remember? Interestingly enough, the Gemara over here now is telling us...
There's only one opinion.
Exactly. The Gemara over here is telling us, what do we do on the last day? And the Gemara describes the last days. So in a scenario where you only have one, which one would you do?
Combine both.
No, remember, each time when we had 2 days, what did we pick for the first day? The second opinion. So also over here, the second day, which is the second thing that's brought by the Gemara, would be that which is read on the first day, when it's not in Galut. Okay? Umaftirin Vayamod Shlomo. Okay. Now, Amar Avuna. So we've now covered all of the special readings for all of the holidays. Let's see if we can wrap up. The Gemara says, Amar Avuna. Avuna says, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, Shabbat shechal liyot b'cholo shel moed. Shabbat that falls out on Chol HaMoed. So this year, as an example, on Pesach, Chol HaMoed is Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, Sunday. Okay? So you're going to have Shabbat right in the middle of Chol HaMoed. So normally, what do you read on Shabbat? Whatever you're up to. Chol HaMoed is still a holiday. And what do we say on the holiday? We suspend the normal reading. Ben Pesach, Ben Masukot. So on Shabbat of Chol HaMoed, every time, what do? Mikra Karina, we read Re'eh Ata. We read the pasuk of Re'eh Ata. And what are we reading Re'eh Ata? Because that covers all the laws of Shabbat. It covers the laws of the Shalosh Regalim. It covers the laws also of Chol HaMoed. And the reason why we're reading that is because Chol HaMoed also has laws about Melacha that you cannot do. Now, we don't really think this way because a lot of the things that we're able to do, that we want to do, we're able to do. But there's certain Melachot that you're not allowed to do on Chol HaMoed. You're really not supposed to write on Chol HaMoed. Did you know that?
Write what?
Write with a pen.
Write anything.
Yeah. What do? They write with the left hand, right? On Chol HaMoed. So no, a person's not supposed to write. What else are you not supposed to do on Chol HaMoed?
Work.
Right. What kind of work? Any work which is not davar ha'aved. Something that if you didn't do it would cause a tremendous loss. Certain things like that. Shopping, really, Chol HaMoed, same thing. Okay. So all these things, right? For food, you'd be allowed to do melachot on Yom Tov. Okay. So the reason why we read about this is because the Gemara that learns the laws of Chol HaMoed and the prohibition of work on Chol HaMoed comes from this chapter of Re'eh Ata. So therefore we read on Shabbat Chol HaMoed that portion. Aftureh, what do we read for Haftarah? Bepesach ha'atzamot ha'yeveshot. We read on Pesach ha'atzamot ha'yeveshot. What is that? That's the prophecy in Yechezkel, where we read about the atzamot yeveshot, the dry bones that come back to life. We read about this whole valley, how there were all these dried up bones, dead people in the valley, and Yechezkel HaNavi tells us about how they came back to life. And he describes the skin and the bone and the tissue all coming together, the process of Tichiyat HaMetim. So we read that on Pesach, on Chol HaMoed. Why do we read that on Pesach? Anyone know? What do we say?
I'm reading the
It
bottom.
says here, the resurrection that will occur in Nisan.
Excellent. Benisan nigalu, benisan atidin ligael. Just like we were redeemed in Nisan once before, we're going to be redeemed again in Nisan. So therefore, what is the prerequisite of Mashiach? Tichiyat HaMetim, right? So since the revivification of the dead is going to happen in the time of Mashiach, and that's going to happen in the month of Nisan, so we connect it with the Geulah of Pesach, and we read the Haftarah of Atzamot Yeveshot. And what do we read on Sukkot? On Sukkot, we read Biyom Bo Gog. We read actually the story about Gog uMagog, how Hakadosh Baruch Hu wages war against Gog, and in that story we read all about this epic cataclysmic battle at the end of time, as we said earlier, that at least one opinion holds is not a battle, but we read about it on Sukkot in that time. And what's the reason why we read about it on Sukkot? So one opinion is because the milchama, according to some shitot, is going to happen in the month of Tishrei. Okay, that's one opinion. That's one reason why I read about Gog in the month of Tishrei. There's another reason as well, and I think this is very powerful. You know, Tishrei is even though Nisan is the first month in the calendar, the world, at least the way we understand it normally, right? The opinion we follow. When is the world created? Not in Nisan. Tishrei. There's one opinion that says Nisan. But we follow the opinion that says Tishrei. How do you know that we hold that? Because what do we say in the Amidah after we blow the shofar? Hayom harat olam. Today the world was created. Okay? So in Tishrei, the world was created. But actually, was the world created in Tishrei? Huh? Doron, excellent. Adam was created in Tishrei. When was the world created? Adam was created on the 6th day of creation. What day does the world start getting created then? 5 days prior. He's created on the 6th day, right? So 5 full days before Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is when the world is created. So why do we say Hayom Harat Olam? Today the world is created. Because in the Jewish perspective, we're not tree huggers. You know what the world is? The world is humanity. Everything else is furniture. Okay? Furniture we have to take care of, furniture we have to respect, but the world was a stage created for human beings to have free will choice, to be able to either do the right thing and be rewarded, do the wrong thing and get punished, to be able to be zocheh l'chayei olam haba. That is the purpose of the world. Therefore, the milchama of Gog uMagog, which is the final stepping stone for the recreation of humanity, when does it happen? In Tishrei. The same way Geula is on a repetitive cycle, and Mashiach comes, like Moshe came in Nisan, and took them out of Egypt. So too, the recreation of the world in the cataclysmic final battle of Gog also takes place in Tishrei. So B'Sukkot, B'Yom Bo Gog. We're going to continue Be'ezrat Hashem from here next time on Thursday. Oh wait, okay. Thursday we have the yeshiva week. So
What do you mean?
I have 1 second.
This coming Thursday?
This coming Thursday.
How about Sunday?
I have a suggestion though. I mean, I don't know what time would
What
work.
does Yeshiva week mean? That means
Yeshiva
you're
week
away.
means the schools are off, so I'm with my kids on
Boris, you have
vacation.
kids in school? Come on.
So the
He's a
day,
grandpa now.
the time off in non-Jewish schools is different than the time off in the yeshivas. So all the Jewishy
Oh,
schools,
Ramaz is not Jewish. I got it.
the Jewishy, I said, right? So what's it called? So we're basically they're
We have
all off.
5 pages left.
Yeah.
So
but
we
the-
need
and
to
this one looks
conclude
like a
by...
Is that
No. Not 5 pages.
Yeah.
No,
looks
not
like
5
of these
black.
pages.
5 of these pages.
Two
Yeah.
dots.
How many did we do now? We just did
One side.
no, we did more than that. 3.
Oh, we did a Hebrew. I'm sorry. We did one side.
Yeah. So in
We
these,
need 1.5 to 2 sessions.
yeah,
Two sessions.
we just did 1, 2,
Can we get 2
3.
sessions out of you?
No, if you could power through.
We
on
did
the-
6.
On the
I
next
don't
dot.
want to chill out.
So we have this.
How
No,
about we do what,
that just means
Sunday?
aggressive. Rabbi's away.
Okay,
This is only half
but
one.
the follow, what's the... let me see.
I could, first of all, 2 things I want to say.
One.
I could do
dot.
Sunday morning for sure. Everyone in my house will be sleeping. We'll just do it
Oh, you're not
we'll do
going
it-
away?
We'll do it 10 a.m. Huh? I am.
You're going away?
Going away Wednesday, and I'm back on the 24th, back on the 30th.
Wednesday is
Tomorrow night.
You're going away tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So Thursday night we're out.
So Thursday night, I could technically squeeze it in before I go to
We
dinner
don't
with the
have to.
kids.
If we do Sunday,
Sunday,
and
So
then
you're out Sunday.
one other day
Back 30th.
next week,
okay.
then we hit
Sunday and a
February. We go February 4th for the seal.
So I could do Sunday morning, and then I could do Tuesday.
Yeah, whatever.
I could do Tuesday and Thursday.
We don't need to.
We'll finish.